I think I was at least close to 10 minutes, so. All right, so in that spirit, I thought it would be perfect next to have what I see as one of the best embodiments of this spirit and how California can lead the way. It is about climate change. Climate change is something that is paralyzing so many decision makers. It's making us all afraid for the future. It's a big, gnarly, complex problem. How do we deal with this? And what it requires is a very sophisticated approach. And David Gershon is, I believe, the man who's got the plan. He is the CEO of the Empowerment Institute. He's been a great innovator in second-order social change, and he has been templating this Cool Cities program in Los Angeles. Palo Alto has just decided to really build their whole city initiatives around this. It's something that it gets the neighborhoods are connected to each other. It gets people engaged in making change, and it has had more powerful results than any other program addressing climate change that I'm aware of, for sure. And now he's going to show how California can do this at scale and shift the world and solve climate change. Welcome, David Gershon.
I love it, brother. This is a very, very cool place. I am so happy to be here. I was telling Stephen that I think California is the place where it's all going to happen. He says, David, it's going to happen in other places. We're going to start here. And I started realizing I'm a California fundamentalist. So I have to expand my vision a little wider than California. But I'm very happy to be here right now. So what I want to speak to you about is change itself. Climate change is a social change problem. It's a climate problem, it's an environmental problem, but it's also a social change problem. That is to say, to solve it, we have to change the way we think about change. And what I want to speak to is the current state of play around how we're addressing climate change and how to innovate around that itself. So where we are right now around the issue is that we have global legislation that's failing to get traction. We have technology that's going to take a long time to scale up. It's important, but it's going to take a long time. And there's a lot of paralysis, and there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of potential despair. I mean, there is despair, but it could be even greater. And you're experiencing that in California big time because of the fires and the droughts and the mudslides and the you name it. So what I want to speak to is first-order change versus second-order change. And climate change is a second-order change problem. That is to say, it requires behavioral change at scale. It requires us to go right to the end state. Not the first-order change state, but the end state. First-order change basically is legislation, important and critical. Financial incentives, important and critical. Awareness campaigns, important and critical. Social protest, important and critical. But they are not second-order change solutions, and they are not getting the job done by themselves. So we have to really innovate around the process of change. And so what I want to speak to is a second-order change solution, which is what cool California and these cool blocks and cool cities represent, which is going right to the end state, which is getting individuals to actually adopt the behaviors that we need to see at scale across a city, a state, a country, a planet. And I'm going to share with you a short video, and then I'll unpack this strategy over the next few minutes. So if you'd kindly tee up the video, this will give you a taste of what this looks like in 3 cities right now in California.
When I was growing up, you kind of relied on your neighbors.
Most people want opportunities to help each other, and they just don't hear about them all the time.
Or don't feel comfortable asking somebody.
Back when I was in Ethiopia, we really have a community-based life. We don't live, very independently like we do in America. I have this motto: I live to serve. I serve my family here, and using the cool block, I can serve my neighborhood.
Where we're headed with global warming is not inevitable. We can stop it. Now I know that I can do it, and my block can do it, and that my neighborhood can do it. I want to save the planet for future generations. You know, I have a son. He hopefully someday will have a family of his own, and they will have a family of their own, and it just goes on and on. I want the human race to continue.
I felt it before I had a kid, but now I feel that pressure even more to leave the earth for the children, hopefully in a better place than when you came into it. You want to take care of the kid more than just about anything in the world. So
one of the things that we've talked about in the groups is how to organize ourselves, especially bringing together and making a community that collaborates and trades not only objects and tools, but help from one another at different times. Relying on other people, you know, that they can check on me. It's a good thing because I might need the help.
The Cool Block program is 9 meetings over approximately 4.5 months that help people learn carbon reduction, water stewardship, disaster resiliency, livability, and empowering others. It is so simple and so profound. People want to connect with people who live in the same place.
The cities are where change is going to happen, and we can do it one neighborhood at a time.
My dream is that we'll reinvent our cities, reinvent our quality of life, reinvent the planet, and build the future that we dream of.
victory is just a matter of organization. And that's what this is. It's blocks organizing, which is the most basic way you can organize beyond your own household. It can't be stopped.
Thank you. So, you are the solution. Let's figure out how to make this happen. So, where does the carbon come from on our planet? It comes from cities. 70% of the carbon emitted on the planet comes from the cities of the planet. And where does the carbon come from within a city? It comes from our lifestyles. 70% of the carbon emitted in a city comes from how you and I use our power to transport ourselves and to power our homes. So we are the problem, and we are the solution, which means that we actually can have impact if we know how to go towards it. So what I want to speak to you about is the idea of behavioral change and engagement of a community. If we're the problem and the solution, how do we actually get us to act on our good intentions? And how do we get enough of us so we make a difference? So I have been on a journey for some 30 years to answer those two questions. And I have been working through a variety of different iterations. The first program I built was on sustainable living. The second one was on livability within neighborhoods, which is safety and health and beautification and greening and resource sharing, community building. The third one was on disaster resiliency. We did this program in New York City after 9/11, which is building energy and disaster resiliency to deal with whatever might come. And another one was on water stewardship, how to help us conserve water and steward it so that it doesn't go into local water bodies through pollutants that come off of our properties. And the last one is on low carbon living, helping us actually reduce our carbon footprint explicitly. Over the years, we've been successful with these programs. We've achieved anywhere from 15 to 40% reduction in different types of resources, 40% solid waste reduction, 15% CO2 reduction, 32% water reduction. So we could achieve behavioral change. I'll tell you how we did it in a little bit. We were also able to get people living on a block, as you saw in the Cool Block video, 25% or more of people living on a block were willing to participate over the meetings. So we also figured out how, again, through, I'll tell you more about it, a set of tools to get people engaged. However, we found that each of these issues was a single issue and only had a finite amount of people who would play. So what we needed to do was to figure out how we could scale it across a city, an entire city, not just a finite number of people within a city. And that led us to the creation of the Cool Block, which you got a taste of before, which integrates all these programs. So just to reiterate, a block leader, someone on the block, you, in your community, if you chose to do this, says, yes, I want to organize my block. We train them on how to reach out to their neighbors. They get at least 5 to 8 households on a block to participate. They meet 9 times over 4.5 months, and they work through these 5 topic areas, which basically represents your life in relationship to the planet and in relationship to your block. So, how does it actually work? Why and how does it change behavior? So what we've learned from these 30 years of research, working with literally tens of thousands of people in hundreds of cities around the world, is a simple formula. This is the formula. Action recipes versus checklists. So we actually walk people through a step-by-step process. If you want to cook something, you have to have a recipe. If you want to change a behavior, you have to have a recipe. So we built 118 recipes, which was the integration of all these different programs. Then you need another. You need a peer support system. It's very difficult to do these things. How many of you know things that you would like to do but haven't done them? Anybody? You need each other. So we know the right things, but we're not acting on it for many reasons. One of them is we need the social connectivity, the social pressure, and the social support. So a peer support system is fundamental. We've then built what we call self-directed, and by the way, this is extrapolatable. This is a second-order change tool. You could apply this to many different issues, so I want to invite you to open a little wider your, perhaps, parameters to think about this. Going to church somewhere. You open your parameters a little wider to realize this could be used in some other platforms that you might be working with. So self-directed meeting guides that walk you through the process of being able to start a team, move it through all the steps of a meeting, and anyone on a team could do that. A volunteer coach has been through it, that understands best practices, and then we've built it into a mobile web platform, which basically allows you to change the world in the palm of your hand. So that's the how of behavior. I could go into a lot more depth, but that gives you the big picture. The question is, how do you get people to actually participate? If you've got a tool that can work, how do you get people to actually participate and join? And what we found was the key was intrinsic motivation. There are a lot of you here who live in the world of values. We've tapped into them in a very practical way. So the reason people join the program is for these 3 things. They want meaning. They get an experience of meaning by, I can make a difference for the sake of my children. And children and the future is specifically part of the script that they use, a neighbor with another neighbor. Community. I don't know the people who live on my block. This is not a quality of life experience. I want to know my neighbors. I will go to a meeting with my neighbor if they invite me. And I want to make a difference, a sense of agency. The world that we live in is a crazy world right now. Not just politically here in America, but around the entire world. I could make a difference on my block. The scale of change is small enough where I could have impact. So what have we achieved in the pilot, explicitly? So we worked in 3 cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Palo Alto, on 45 blocks, so very different types of blocks. 55% of the people invited by their neighbors to come to their home said, yes, I will come and join this program and commit to 9 meetings over 4.5 months. We were hoping to get a 25% CO2 reduction per household. We got 32%. People really got into this across these cities. And disaster resiliency, which is a key part of the driver for so many people because you're at such risk here, a lot of parts of the world, but particularly here, was a big part of it. And we got people to specifically do all the I don't know how many of you here have done all the things that you know you should do for disaster resilience, but many people have not. So we got them to take the specific actions that would enable them to withstand whatever disaster might come, or at least better prepare themselves and have connectivity with their neighbors. And across the board, they took 25 distinct actions. So we have a program that works and that is really capable of being scaled. So feedback. We've been in conversation with Gavin Newsom. He's been a strong supporter. We're continuing the conversation. Hopefully he'll be your new governor. And use this as a platform for his own next administration to have a second-order change solution to climate change, along with the first-order change tools that are already in play. We're having rich conversations right now. A typical participant really starts to speak to the social blueprint of a community being rewritten. This is way bigger than climate. Climate change is truly an opportunity. And we're starting to discover we can use it to rebuild our community, to rewire our communities, which is the city manager of Palo Alto, speaking to the idea of rewiring a city. Yesterday, I had a meeting with the city of Palo Alto city leadership, and they said, we want to create our key performance indicators built around the Cool Block program across all the departments. They're literally rewiring their city around this because they see this can enable our city departments to perform at a much higher level. We don't know how to do this. This can help us. So lots of potential. So the question is, how will it scale? So the first part of a two-part strategy is what we call the Cool City Challenge, which is a 3-year process which Empowerment Institute helps cities with. And we bring some financing that we've been able to generate, and then they match it. We're going to work between 25 and 75% of the blocks. This is the big lift. When you start having that much participation, you are in non-linear mode. Things can happen that no one could even imagine possible when you get that level of second-order change knowledge embedded at the scale of a block. We're going to go for the 25% carbon reduction. We've been able to achieve that and better. And build disaster resilience. That's the core of the Cool City Challenge. And we'll be working with 5 blocks, 5 cities to start with. But that's not good enough. That's just the warm-up act, because that doesn't change the game around climate. What changes the game around climate is what your governor has said is needed by 2045, which is carbon neutrality. And we want to start to build that city by city by city. And that's the Cool California Challenge. And we're raising $10 million to create the Cool California Carbon Neutral City X Prize. And we're setting a date that's in reality with what the planet is telling us, which is 2030, which is still quite long, but it's the closest date we've been able to get to that has any reality. So by 2030, the first cities that start to do that will start to share in that $10 million prize. They have to achieve at least the Cool City status or above. We've got 3 levels, because without the engagement of the community, you don't get very far. And they prepare the way for the heavy lift of a carbon neutral city. So, now that you know where we're going, I want to take you into the future. Michael so beautifully said, if you can't see it, you can't create it. So I have begun to envision what it would look like if we succeeded. And California literally changed the world. And we actually got our arms around climate change. And we actually have a path forward for humankind. I want to share that vision with you. And it's actually, as you'll see, not a stretch. It might seem like one, but if you just extrapolate on what I'm sharing with you and these tools, you could see it happen. I can see it happen. I actually see it happening. So here's the journey. You're ready to go and put on your visionary hat. I don't know what a visionary hat looks like, but whatever it is, put it on. So it's now 2020, Stevens Conference. We have this big event in Stevens Conference in a couple of years. And we have 5 cities who've stepped up. We've worked on 153 blocks now. They've achieved the basic goals. And they're ready to play the game called Becoming a Cool City. Okay, fast forward to 5 years. We now have 22 cool cities, which has 25% block participation, 15 super, does anyone want to have a super cool city? If you do, you need 50% block participation. And if you are really going for your high level of cool factor, you can become ultra cool if you get 75%. And I'm already talking to cities that are planning out on how to get to 75%. One of them is Montecito, which I hope will achieve it. It's a small enough city. But what's also happening is we're changing the game of how a community works, because when you start to achieve that level of carbon reduction, you build the low carbon economy that we all know is possible. And you build it around the trifecta of solar, energy efficient, and retrofits of homes and EV take up. That's where the opportunities for technology starts to show up. And you move into smartphones and bikes as the primary vehicle. You start seeing resiliency very deeply happening. And you start seeing disaster resiliency happening very deeply because you now have what's called a cool neighborhood, and you can start to create these CERT teams. City government become empowerment facilitators, and we create a renaissance of civic engagement. All the problems that we face in the cities have cool blocks taking them on. Where does that leave us? This prepares us for the carbon neutral city. So with a carbon literate, empowered, and galvanized community, with everyone in play, with distributed leadership across the neighborhoods, with a sense of agency and empowerment tools, enabling transformation, with that can-do attitude, which is we can actually pull this off, and we did, we get ourselves ready for the carbon neutral city lift, which is an audacious goal, time frame that's measurable and short. The enthusiasm of our youth who become the social entrepreneurs who were involved in the cool city, local businesses stepping up to raise the capital, the nonprofits stepping up to solve the problems that they are uniquely qualified for, city and citizens becoming partners and changing the game, the state stepping up and using cap and trade dollars to actually invest in carbon neutral cities, and creating tax incentives and creating capability through the state universities with the knowledge to mentor the cities. Second order change leveraged so that we now embed it at the scale of the whole city. These technical solution teams and policy and all the solution teams that are necessary now in play. Well, here's how we change the world. It's now 2030. California has changed the world. We have 23 carbon neutral cities. They have cities from all over the world coming to learn. These become the teaching cities, and all over America. And there's a new cool. California is known for being cool, but this is the upgrade of what it means to be cool in California. I mean, who would come to California if they don't want to be cool? So, number one, carbon neutral is cool. Number two, all hands on deck. Everyone playing together well is cool. Smartly and well is cool. A state connected is cool. And the state gets inspired, and they say, you know what? We can be the first carbon neutral state, essentially country, in the world. And they go for it, and they push the envelope. And lastly, they open up this trillion-dollar market. The money is starting to flow because carbon neutral cities and carbon neutral states is going to generate the kind of resources that capabilities that all the businesses will want to now invest in it. So the money is now available. Now it's just about us. So we've done it. We've provided a path forward. California can take a deep breath. It has actually pulled off the most important and significant challenge that humanity has needed. We've done it. And we have our beautiful home for a little longer. So let me close with a thought. One of my favorite quotes. Again and again in history, some people wake up and they have no ground in the crowd. That would seem to be many of us. And they move to broader, deeper laws. They carry strange customs with them. And they demand room for bold and audacious action, the job description of a change agent. The future speaks ruthlessly through them. They change the world. So, let us succeed and change the world. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.